keep people on their toes, too, and make sure they're doing the readings. Because I have a sneaky suspicion that people aren't. And I know how I was when I was a student. I, did readings sometimes, and I get it. Alrighty. Now I'm not going to play music. I'll save this for next week. Gotta be kidding me. Who's that again? Is that you, Ms. Scani, over down Dolan? You gotta be kidding.
What is wrong with that? You got a cardinal.
Okay. Huh? Cardinal Peter Turkson. Peter Apia Cardinal Turkson of Ghana was here giving a talk on Monday. I didn't go, but, Mr. Sheldon went. It was a good time. Did they have food? Okay. I wish I had known that. I would have gone for the food. I usually go places for the food. Let me just make sure I got Mr. Uman. Okay. What is a cardinal? Don't worry, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes or the rest of the class on what is a cardinal, but just in case you're curious, a cardinal is simply I guess it could be a woman. Usually nowadays it's restricted to a person who's a bishop. But it doesn't have to be. Really, a cardinal was a kind of honorary position in the Church of Rome, the Diocese of Rome, given to certain people. Typically men. I don't think there were any women cardinals ever, but I don't think it necessarily would have to today be limited to men. But anyways, but it was given to men. And usually men who were in some kind of holy order. So you have 3 levels. You have a cardinal bishop, you have cardinal priests, and you have cardinal deacons. Okay, so you had deacons who were cardinals in the church. However, as I said, the times have changed, and now it's pretty much just bishops. So you have bishops, they're all bishops, and yet they're still called, someone's a cardinal bishop, someone's a cardinal priest, someone's a cardinal deacon. Why, when they're all bishops? Well, different honors, Maybe you like this guy, you want to make him a cardinal, but you don't want to make him fully the highest level of cardinal, so you'll lowball him and make him a cardinal deacon. So he's still technically a cardinal. These are the politics that goes on in the Vatican. This is what the Pope thinks about all day, This is what But anyways, what did the cardinals do? The cardinals were important for electing the new bishops of Rome. They, just as today, the cardinals would come together to elect who would be the new bishop of Rome. And they're technically considered part of the Roman Church. So Cardinal Dolan, who is the bishop of what? I'm giving you information. Well, I might do that too, but not right now. Cardinal, what's his first name? I forget his. Cardinal Dolan, not Chris, not Bill, not Bob. Timothy. Thank you. Timothy Cardinal Dolan, and you insert the cardinal in the middle before the last name. It's just a custom, because the word cardinal means hinge, like Tukos from Pentateuch. It means hinge. So it's like the hinge of the person becomes the hinge of the person's name. People are trying to get away from that, but I love customs like that. There's little things, the world doesn't turn on them at all, But they're just, I think, cool little things, Timothy Cardinal Dolan, Matthew Cardinal Dunn. Hey, I can read, can I? I never know. So Cardinal Dolan is the Bishop of New York. However, as a cardinal, he also has a title to a church in Rome, I don't know which church it is, but if you look it up on the internet, it'll say he is also a member of a church in Rome, which according to church law you can never visit. That's part of, because it's a custom. It's not real anymore. Because the cardinals originally were Romans. They all lived in Rome. That's why they were cardinals. But now, as times have changed over hundreds of years, it's become more of an honorary thing. The popes give it out to outsiders as well as insiders. So while Timothy Dolan is not part of the Church of Rome, technically, the actual diocese, he does have a church there that he's a cardinal. And some of these churches in Rome have like maybe 10 cardinal bishops, 10 cardinal priests. They're doing well. No, it's just on the books. It's a custom, okay? What else? Yeah, okay. That's all I'm going to say. So it's just an honorary thing. It doesn't change. It doesn't make any person more of a bishop. It doesn't make Timothy Dolan more of a bishop and make, for example, John Myers, the Archbishop of Newark, less of a bishop because he's not a cardinal. It's usually an honorary thing given to important bishops and important dioceses in the world. His Holiness Pope Francis I just made a whole bunch of, well, I shouldn't say just, a few months ago, made a whole slew of new cardinals, and he used it for political purposes. He wanted to make a statement about the universality of the church. So, like one of the new cardinals, and I showed you his picture. He's on the PowerPoint. I forget, was he from the Kingdom of Tonga? He was from one of the Pacific Islands. He's a Pacific Islander, and I think another guy is a Malankar Catholic bishop. The Malankars are in India, Mr. Goldberg, on the west coast of India. Malankar Catholics. They are of the Eastern churches. So we wanted to make a point by opening up the cardinalate to include more people than just, say Europeans or South Americans or North Americans, to show the universality of the church. So anyway, so that's enough of that. Oh, it also is, since the Pope is also a head of state, cardinals are considered technically princes. They're considered kind of like royalty in a sense, citizens of the Vatican state, since it's also considered a country. Okay, back to the end of this statement. I might be done with this statement. So, blah, 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 and for His Holy Spirit, and handed on as such to the church herself. Okay, so the final statement in this portion, these things have been handed on to the church herself. And as I said last time, basically that the bishops are saying, and we can't change it, so don't expect us to, Mr. Woodard. Don't expect us to. Don't expect us to. Because these have been handed on to the church. Handed on. Trado, handed on. This is not a custom. This is not a custom. This is a matter of sacred tradition. So when the Mormons come knocking on my door, and I just love the Mormons. They're so adorable, And tell me they want to give me another testament of Jesus Christ, I think of this. Well, has that been handed on? Was that handed on to the church? No, because the Book of Mormon was found, supposedly, according to the story. This bunch of golden plates with writing on them were found by a farm boy in upstate New York named Joseph Smith sometime in the 1820s. So in my brain, I have this weird thing, I think. It's just an odd thing that I do. And I think like 1820, that means 1,820 years have passed without these things being accessible to humankind. Why? Okay, why? Tell me. And if the elders can give me a good answer, then the conversation will continue. If they can't, I just say, well, God bless you. I'll stick to my Old and New Testaments. They seem to be doing me fine. And you can take your New Testament, which was found back in the 1800s. And wasn't even found. An angel had to tell him where it was. So Joseph Smith wasn't even looking for it. An angel had to say, oh, by the way, this is where it is. So this has been handed on to the church, and the church does not have the right to change it. It accepts it as it is, which is a really, as I've been discussing the scriptures with you and telling you some of the stories from the scriptures, can make it, a real matter of faith. It can be tough on your faith. I mentioned at the end of the last class about, stuff I've read in Hindu literature, the Upanishads, which are kind of like bunch of philosophical lectures, the Upanishads, or the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very pretty, not very long either. If you want a good overview of the Hindu view of the world, you could read the Bhagavad Gita. The conversation between Krishna and this guy Arjuna during a war. They're in the midst of a battle. In the midst of this battle and war, Arjuna, who is riding around on his chariot, chopping off heads, or doing what you do in a war, decides to have kind of like a discussion on the meaning of life with what turns out to be Krishna, this kind of godlike figure. Or I've read the Quran and stuff like that, but I'll stick with Hinduism. In Hinduism, take a figure like Krishna. I've read that some scholars think there might be some historical background to Krishna, meaning that there might have been, some famous person, Krishna, who then became a god within Hinduism. But if you read the Puranas, the myths about the Hindu myths about the various gods and goddesses and where they come from, they're totally ahistorical. There's nothing, they're not meant to be historical, because the gods and goddesses don't exist in history. They exist on their own realm. That's because they're gods and they're goddesses. But all sorts of things that for a human might be normal for a human are not normal for them. I've joked with Ms. Patel that one time about Ganesh. Just because it's an interesting story. Ganesh's parents were, and I'm kind of, I'm giving you the kind of Cliff's Notes version of the myth, but from what I understand, his parents were fighting, or somebody was fighting. Ganesh is the baby, and somehow Ganesh's head got cut off. So in order to save Ganesh, the little, you've probably seen these statues, the old fat guy, and he has a big elephant head. Maybe you've seen him. His mother takes an elephant's head and just sticks it onto his body, and he comes back to life. Ganesh, the A is usually left silent, so you see it spelled Ganesha, but it's pronounced Ganesh. Okay, same thing with stories of Krishna. He's kind of already a divine person, but it's not like Jesus in the incarnation. The gods never become physical reality because there is no physical reality. The physical reality, the physical world is really just an illusion. Maya, as they say, M-A-Y. I'll write it on the board. I've read the Quran, not the whole thing, but parts of it, and to me, and I don't mean to offend any Muslims, okay, it's supposed to be the most perfect book in the world, but it was still written in Arabic, classical Arabic, okay, which is, okay, it's not the most perfect language in the world, I would say, but if you go to certain mosques, they almost divinize the Arabic of the Quran, like it's the most because the Quran is from God, and it's written in Arabic, in classical Arabic, from Muhammad's time, back in the 600s AD. It has to be almost like the language of God, and therefore, since God is perfect, therefore even the Arabic of the Quran is perfect. And so, in their interpretations of Quranic passages, Muslim Islamic scholars will try to find all sorts of symbolism or hidden messages from God and stuff. Okay, great, that floats your boat, But that's why if you become a Muslim, you have to learn Arabic to read the Quran. You cannot, it's not like our Bibles, you can read them in translation. But, the Arabic has been divinized in a way to the point that, the culture has been divinized to the point that, that's the language that Muhammad received the message in. And in fact, there's the belief, it's called the al-Kitab, the mother of the book. There's the belief, and not all Muslims would believe this. I mean, you'd have what they would call liberal Muslims who say it's just a symbol, but I think a number of Muslims would at least admit they've heard of this, that all Muhammad was seeing in writing the Quran were visions of the Quran written on a stone in the presence of God. So, the Quran exists in eternity. And you find similar ideas in Judaism, amongst Hasids, amongst Orthodox Jews. They believe the Torah was written in Hebrew. Hebrew is almost like God's language. So they think that, Hebrew is almost like a divine language. And there are, in the tradition of Judaism, there were beliefs that, and there still are, there are Jews who believe this, that, the Torah is almost eternal. That the Torah existed with God from eternity and was kind of given to Moses. And so the Torah is divine. So you don't change the Torah. You don't modify it. You live it as perfectly as possible. So I don't want it to sound like I'm hitting on, okay, Mr. Dunn will go after the Hindus and the Muslims, but, I'm talking about Jews here. To whom I owe my salvation. I don't agree with them. I don't think, Hebrew is a divine language. It's a human language in which the scriptures were written. I don't know how I pass as a Muslim because I wouldn't believe in the whole Arabic thing either. But keep that at a low whisper if I went to the mosque. But the Bible, the church accepts the Bible not only for its divinity, in the sense that it has God as its author, but for its humanness as well. I don't try and explain away the divergences in the Bible or contradictions or the fact that, when someone was, say, writing about historical events, the person may have gotten some details wrong. Or that a person might have had a conception of the world and the universe that was not accurate. Like I mentioned, the sun moving around the earth rather than vice versa. What happened? What was big in the news for astronomers this past week? Huge event happened. A huge event. If you're an astronomer, what happened? It's all over the news. What happened? Sorry, I gotta get some kind of crossbreed going. What happened? Miss Scanio. Okay, well, we know about black holes. Good, you're on the right track, Miss Scanio. Good. Something to do with two black holes. What? What happened? Did aliens come out of the black holes? No. But you've got a similar, okay, it's not a bad answer. I mean, it's not correct, but it's close. It's getting us closer. Something about black holes and pull. Black holes do have a lot of pull. Yes. Let's see. Getting closer. We're getting closer. It was a huge event. Huge event. Proof one of the theories of Einstein. Theory of Einstein. Matching theorem of Rome. The discovery of gravitational waves. What is that all about? Well, you just said it, sir. What is it? Well, what do you mean by your question? Well, gravitational waves. What are those? I'm not sure. I'm an astronomer. I can read you, but I'm not an astronomer. But did you just say it? I did. Where'd you get it from?
Wherever I read it.
Wherever you read it. So do you know what it means?
Not exactly, no.
So you don't even know what it means, but you say gravitational wave.
Yeah.
Okay, who knows what he means? Who really knows what he means? Look at me just what you said. Who really knows what he means? What are you going to say? Not that, apparently. Okay. Well, we've hit, the train has rolled into the station, but the conductor is blind. You know, we just, somehow the train made it to the station, and the conductor is like, okay. Yeah.
Isn't it just like these signals that are elicited from the gravitational pull? I just don't know what planet or what black hole they're coming from.
Oh, no planets.
No.
No planets. So I think you're extrapolating.
Was it a theory of relativity or was
Nope.
it wasn't?
Nope. Nope. Good. That's what Socrates said. The beginning of wisdom is to know what you do not know. That's the beginning of wisdom. To know that you do not know. Socrates. And he was a smart man. So, yes, I mean, Einstein has a lot of theories, okay? So it's not just those couple of theories like relativity, space-time, light, stuff like that. But one of his theories was that when you have something that's massive enough, and I know it's not the same thing, but just so people can understand it, that something is weighty enough, heavy enough, okay, has enough mass, it can affect the fabric of space-time. And it's a fabric of space-time because space and time are like two sides of the same coin, okay? And some things can be big enough that they're kind of like their weight in that space-time makes itself apparent. So, for example, our sun. This was one of his theories that was proven, okay? Because if you look at our sun and you try to look at the light and stars that come to us from behind it, okay, according to Einstein's prediction, there should be a certain amount of curvature in the light, okay? And because of that, that shows that the light is bent. The massiveness of our sun affects the space-time around it, and it bends or appears to bend the light coming towards us. Well, that was a theory. That was something he published in an article with his reasoning for it. Seemed watertight, airtight, brilliant, you know. But he had no proof, you know. It took astronomers actually had to go down to Australia during the next solar eclipse. So this was like 100 years ago. So you can imagine photography being what it was back then. They had to, you know, bring like all sorts of acid and junk, and they had to go like to the real outback of Australia. Well, Australia, if you ever go on Google Maps and do the street view for Australia? I do, because I think it's cool. Do that. Ride up central. I mean, Australia is the size of the continental United States and only has like 20 million people in it. I mean, the central part of Australia is like the size of if you took Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas. Think how huge those states are. I've driven across South Dakota, which I don't ever want to do again. Because it was just like a lot of flat. A lot of flat. And Waldrug, these signs for a place called Waldrug every like 5 friggin' miles, you know. Waldrug. You know, eventually I had to go to Waldrug. I had to see what the heck this place was. And it wasn't that impressive, believe me. But, you know, Waldrug. Anyway. So yeah, South Dakota, from Rapid City, South Dakota, Pierre in the middle of South Dakota, Rapid City in the mountains, Pierre, and then to the border with Minnesota, is flat. Thank God when we hit Wisconsin, when we started actually having suburbs and doing donuts. I didn't realize what like a suburbanite I was. You know, like, civilization, McDonald's. You know, so there was like I mean nothing. I mean that's scary. I mean you break down there, man. There was like nobody. You could see in your rearview mirror. There's like nobody behind you and nobody interesting. So anyways, that's Australia. That's the whole central part of Australia. Like, few people live there. Few. So these dudes had just, the next solar eclipse, which is coming up, in order to prove his theory, and two groups of people went through the outback of Australia so they could take pictures. That would be the best place to get the eclipse. So, well, can't you see an eclipse from everywhere? No. Can't. Sometimes eclipses don't, you know, cover the whole planet. So the best place to see it was at the bottom of the planet, Australia. And when they took the pictures and analyzed them, there was almost exactly the degree of curvature that Einstein predicted, so that proved his theory. Black holes are extremely massive objects. They're only created when a star that's equally huge collapses in on it. It kind of cannibalizes. Eventually, the star runs out of fuel and it cannibalizes itself, and it becomes like a shell, and it expands and then crashes into itself. If it's massive enough, it'll crash to the point that it tears space-time, and that creates a black hole. Don't worry, our sun won't do that. It's not big enough. All right. So, but anyway, somewhere in the universe, I think it was in the Milky Way galaxy, but whatever, two black holes sometimes, and this happens sometimes, came together to form a supermassive black hole, and this crashing together caused a wave in space-time, and the gravitation, called gravitational wave, but really it's the space-time that holds everything together. We created a little ripple, and it passed by Earth, and our instruments were able to detect it, to see where it came from, and it was the first time ever that it's ever been detected. Now, it probably happened before. I mean, you have to remember, our astronomy is what, modern astronomy is like, what, 100 years old, really? You know, so it's all relative, you know? But a gravitational wave, cool. Now, why did I tell you about that? We'll talk about this in a minute. Why did I tell you about that? What's the use? How did I get to this? Well, look at your notes. Follow your notes back for me. No, Goldberg? Nothing? Nothing? Something had to occur in my head that was relevant. Einstein, gravitational. Before that, I was talking about the Bible, right? And historicity and humanness and... Oh! Yeah, okay. Now I remember. Good. You know, so, I mean, where are gravitational waves, Mr. Barone? Can you tell me where they're described in which book of the Bible?
I don't think they are.
Why would you not think that they were described?
Well, I haven't read the entire Bible.
Okay, let's take a guess.
Not really sure, honestly. I don't think they
Really? After all my whole exposition?
I don't think the Bible really controls the science too much.
Well, okay then. All right, game on, Barone.
That's just in my perspective here. You probably read more of it.
Well, Mr. Barone, when did Einstein propose his theory? Well, when did Einstein live, generally?
A while ago.
A while ago. Okay. Stone Age?
Nah.
I mean,
A little sooner.
1700?
Nah, a little bit further.
Think so?
Yeah.
1920s?
Probably around somewhere.
So you do have an idea of when
I
they
have
lived.
some sort of idea, yeah.
Okay, it's some sort of, why don't you just say the last century?
I like to be a little bit sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, I forget when he was born, but he proposed a lot of his major theories, believe it or not, over the span of like a year in a number of published articles, and became famous off of that. And then for the rest of his life, he was just like considered the genius. You know, that's So that's Albert Einstein. But so if you get a few really good articles out there in the journals, then. But he was a genius. I mean, the guy spent a lot of time simply daydreaming. A lot of his work, that his idea. I mean, he had the chops. You know, he had training, as well as I think his wife as well. But she was a woman, so you know, for what it's worth. But he and his wife are both trained physicists, so she and he. Anyway, he bounces ideas off of her too. So anywho, where's it going with this? Oh, so all right. Einstein lived in the last century. Einstein proposed his theory in the last century. It's only within the last week that there was actually a recording of a gravitational wave to prove his theory. Well, when was this stuff? What's this datable to? Yeah.
A lot longer.
A lot longer. You know, well, let's say, you know, a few thousand years. Yeah. So I mean, forget about that. It's the Bible. Any book, even a textbook published a year ago in astrophysics, would not have this information in it. It would still be a theory. So why would I expect dinosaurs in the Bible? Or gravitational waves, for that. It's written by men, just because it has God as his author, and God knows everything. True, God knows everything. God knew about the dinosaurs, but he also knew what he was dealing with. He was dealing with human beings, whose conception of the world probably couldn't handle everything. You know? Which is probably why when you read the Bible, you know, these people that always find predictions in the Bible after the fact. You know, why didn't they find quantum mechanics in the Bible? Quantum mechanics, you know, protons, neutrons, electrons. Why is that not in the Bible? I mean, if God knows everything, going on that logic, and the Bible is just kind of like a textbook of all of God's knowledge, why is God apparently holding stuff back? Maybe it's being read the wrong way. That doesn't take away from the truth, because there are more things than simply scientific truth, and maybe God had more in mind than just to tell people how the world was made, actually made. I'm talking about the Big Bang and evolution and all that stuff, and how we came about. God had a bigger message than just that. So in composing the sacred books, God used men with their powers and abilities, and men in the sense generalized human beings, but probably males. No offense, but that's just probably culturally the way it was. With their own powers and abilities. This includes what they knew and what they didn't know. It includes prejudices, bigotry. It includes opinions. Sometimes the opinions are wrong. For example, to give you just one example, if you read like the book of Job, which is one of the ancient stories found in the Bible, it's a very old story. Job might not even be an Israelite. It's so old. It may just be a story that the Jews took and kind of made him into an Israelite, a follower of the God of Israel. Because it's still a good story, and they told it their way from their perspective. But if you read the book of Job, you don't get an overpowering sense of an afterlife. In fact, you might even get some sense that there is no afterlife, that it's being denied. You just go into the dust and you are no more. That doesn't mean you shouldn't still live your life by God's law. God's always got you. I think God will, but, that's just kind of the view, because people, didn't have a very conscious idea of an afterlife. If they did have an idea of an afterlife, it was, it wasn't a hell, but it wasn't really a happy place. Kind of a place of darkness and, goths would love it, but, you know, a place of, you know, a lot of candles and a lot of women wailing, "Ooh, woo, woo," in the background, in Latin, of course. You know, a lot of people wearing black lace. No goth fans? Have you ever seen no goth people? All right, fine. But usually the afterlife for people in the Bible was, you know, kind of murky and dark and not. It was a place everyone went, rich or poor, wise or foolish, good or bad, because people didn't really think about it. You know, it's just death was part of life, and it happened, and people didn't really conceive of any sort of reward or punishment. The reward and punishment was supposed to come in this life. So God would reward you with food and wealth and, you know, big family and peace, etc. So, you know, in this life. That's kind of like people were very this life centered. They weren't focused on living for an afterlife of rewards and punishments. And of course, on the flip side, if you're a bad person, the Lord was supposed to come get you, you know, take away your stuff, you know, kill your child, you know, so that you don't have any, you know, like your wife becomes barren and can't give birth to children, kill your livestock and stuff like that, because you're a bad person, you know. That's how people looked at it, you know. God would be the judge and the punisher. So if you read like Job, you know, the whole story of Job is actually kind of turning this all on its head, because Job is an unquestionably righteous man, a good man, and yet he has everything taken away from him. He's punished as if he's a bad man, and he can't figure out why. That's basically the story of the book of Job. Nevertheless, okay, so here's an opinion that you find in the Bible that people didn't really challenge. Didn't think about it too much, and they didn't really challenge it. But as time rolls on and you look at some of the later books of the Bible, some of the prophets, like Malachi and stuff like that, they say, no, it's not just this life. That there is God, if God is a living God, He's not a God of death, He's a God of life, and that those who are righteous will be taken up into the presence of God, into His life, and those that are not righteous, who rebel against Him, will go to a place of punishment, some place of fire. You know, they conceived it kind of like, Gehenna. Jesus uses the image of Gehenna. And sometimes it's translated as hell in your Bibles, and that's not appropriate. Gehenna was a garbage dump on the outskirts of Jerusalem where they burned the garbage. So it was stinky, it was smelly, it was dirty, it was filthy. You know, there was all sorts of junk there, you know, corpses of animals, not people, of course, they buried the dead. But, you know, rotting stuff, all sorts of junk. It was a garbage dump. And so it smelled. It was kind of like Staten Island when the wind is blowing the wrong way. And this is not a knock on Staten Island, but that's where New York City sends all its junk. You know, because I used to live there. I went to St. John's, and, you know, one day they have a huge garbage dump that they just dumped on this beautiful little island. And if the wind's blowing the wrong way, no matter where you are on that island, you can smell it. You smell the stench. Ugh. And that's kind of like what Gehenna was. It was the Valley of Hinnom. Hinnom. Valley of Hinnom. Don't worry about it. But Gehenna is a combination of two words. In this valley was where all the refuse and all the junk and all the stuff that people didn't want, they dumped it there and they burned it. So you had maggots and worms, and you had smoke and smell and all sorts of stuff. And Jesus latches onto that imagery. If you've read the Gospel, by now you should have read. I noticed that in the last class I said, as people read the New Testament, you should have read at least the Gospel of Mark by now. Also on my drive home, I noticed that when I was telling everyone when they were leaving, you know, to have a safe drive, be safe. No one said anything like that to me. Not one person. Be safe, Mr. Dunn. You know, be safe in the weather going home. Interesting. Don't you think, Miss Tanis? Interesting. Yes, sir.
I told you to be safe going home.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, he did. And I did too.
You did?
Yeah, because there were lots of people in class.
I apologize. I apologize. But the majority did not. The majority did not. I'm just mad. So God knows the tools, but He's dealing with, okay? And He works with that. God doesn't work, like He works with us. Does God make sure that you have a PhD in biblical studies or in theology before He decides, oh, I want to work with that person? Not from my understanding. Does God give you a test? Does God give you a test today to make sure you get 100% before He says, okay, now I can be in a relationship with this person. Now I'll deign to reveal something. Well, if you read the Bible, my experience with the Bible is no. He doesn't. Oftentimes He reveals Himself to people who don't want to have anything revealed to them. Usually in the conversations that people have with God, like Moses, the prophet Isaiah, it's usually, leave me the hell alone. And giving reasons why they can't, they don't want to be involved with God. Okay? So the church affirms that human beings are true authors. And their job was to consign, which is just a fancy way of saying put down in writing, all those things that God, and only those things that God wanted. Only those things that God wanted. So that's what I'm looking for when I read the Bible. I'm not saying it always works for me. There are plenty of times when I read the Bible, I'm like, why am I reading this? Why is this relevant? Why did the Lord want somebody to write this down? Okay? Well, sometimes it might have no more meaning for me, but it might have had meaning for previous generations. Because the Bible is fluid. It's not written all at one time by one person with one agenda. There are all sorts of agendas competing in the Bible. Okay, and believe it or not, I know, sometimes you could be driving down in Mississippi and you'll see a billboard that says, read the Bible, God's love letter to you. You hear that? The Bible is God's love letter. No? Never heard that? No? Come on. I'm sure some preacher has laid that on you, Ms. Tanis. You've heard it?
I think some people.
All right, well, I've heard it. That's sufficient for me. Yeah? Believe it or not, the person writing, even the Gospels, probably didn't have you in mind, or me, or any of us. Which might explain why, the person writing the Gospel of John, or Paul writing the 2 Corinthians, doesn't specifically address questions that you might have wanted him to address. He's addressing questions in each community. Johannine community in the case of John, community of the Corinthians in the case of Paul. God might know the broader picture of how this revelation is going to be used. Okay, but these are also written by historical human beings with their own knowledge, who might not necessarily be on maybe the same wavelength that you are now in 2016. Okay, yes. Have a good day. God bless you all. I apologize, Mr. Lutzo and Ms. Nichols. I didn't take back my prayer that you were all safe. I'm glad that you were all safe. Still, Aquila, do you still want to see me?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.